RedZone. I'm with my boy Rohan. We're going to recap week 2 of training camp. We're going to get into a very good discussion about 2 quarterbacks on the roster, not just one, right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the 49ers RedZone podcast. I'm with my co-host, Rohan, today. Rohan's actually been at, every open camp, so he's the go-to guy. Actually, Rohan is actually the up-and-coming guy in the game. I mean, if you guys aren't following him, make sure you guys tap in. It's interesting because Rohan is very underappreciated on Twitter. He needs to be followed by way more people than are following him. So make sure you guys go hit that follow button on all his Twitter account. Make sure you guys start reading every single article. He's honestly almost at 3K followers, and he's jumped from 1,500 within the last month to 3K. And next thing you know, he's gonna be at 10K. So don't be late on the hive. Join it now, right? How you doing, my boy?
Yeah, I'm good. And as Marco's saying that, especially jump on the hive right now because me and my guy Wayne Breezy just announced that we're doing a giveaway. So you guys better go find that tweet on my timeline because we're giving away a signed Elijah Mitchell jersey on Elijah Mitchell Day, the 25th of August. So be sure to go ahead, see what you need to do. You got to follow the YouTube channels that we're on, the Instagrams, and the Twitters. So be sure you guys don't miss out on that because that is definitely something you don't want to miss out on. It's a great opportunity. And, we obviously want to give away just because all of you guys have done great for us, just giving a little back to y'all.
Dang, he's giving away signed jerseys out here. Man, he's doing it big out here. Doing it real big. Yes, Zach. I am doing it outside today. Everyone's inside doing their thing, so I stepped outside with the nice greenery. I've been indoors all day at work, so sometimes I just have to get away. And yes, as Kelly Young says, man, Rohan's the best, man. He's the best in the biz. So that's one thing everyone should know. Rohan is killing it. Rohan, let's get right into it, right? Let's jump into it. Should we talk O-line or should we go quarterbacks first? Because I think O-line is a really big issue. And I shouldn't say the whole entire O-line, but should we do that first and then lead our way into the quarterbacks, or should we do secondary first? You tell me. I know you like to talk secondary.
Let's go offense. Let's go defense. But there's still a lot to talk about. And real quick, got to give a shout out to Dion. Thank you for tuning in as well. But let's go O-line, then let's go quarterbacks, and then let's hit the secondary. Offensive line originally. What are you just hearing? And what are your initial thoughts, especially at the position requiring right now the most work?
There is concern at center. That's absolutely some stuff that I've heard. Is there's very big concerns at center. When you look at the center position, right? We go from a couple of guys in the last couple of years who have been very capable of starting players, right? And the next thing you know, we're relying on a guy, Jake Brendel, and I'm going to use a word that's thrown out there a lot by people, but it's not necessarily. Yes, Rohan's everywhere. He's constantly doing
everything.
What the
vibe is, bro. I just love doing this stuff, and I'm gonna keep grinding. That's just the vibe. You know how it be.
I already said when Rohan gets big, he's gonna blow up, and everyone's gonna be like, "Damn, that dude's a rich millionaire doing football stuff." That's what's gonna happen. I see it. I see the future. But going back to the center, right?
Yeah.
Jake Brendel is essentially a journeyman, right? No one's really said it on that I've seen so far, on Twitter, oh, Jake Brendel's super smart. Jake Brendel has gotten all this praise. Well, if we look at Jake Brendel's career, he's essentially a journeyman, which is very concerning for that being your guy who's competing for the starting center, right? At the end of the day, he hasn't been able to get that opportunity to start. So when he's given that opportunity, what does he do with it? And that's a big thing, right? Because when you're given an opportunity and you do great things, then you could be like, okay, that should have been a guy that teams missed on. But I believe he's 29. And he
Yeah.
hasn't gotten a starting opportunity. He's been with a couple teams that have needed interior offensive line, and he's just not doing well. So he's struggling in camp. And then we also have Daniel Brunskill, who, from what I've heard, is the 49ers would love for Daniel Brunskill to win that job because he's not getting the guard spot back. That spot is locked up with Spencer Burford. He has won that job. He's done it in the film room. He did it in OTAs, and he's impressed highly during camp. So that is one thing that it's like, okay, now what do you do with a guy like Daniel Brunskill? I mean, he doesn't have a big cap hit. Do you try to trade him? Do you go after a actual true center to rely on? And that's what you get. It gets tricky, right? Who's out there for center? In my opinion, I think if the 49ers brought in Billy Price right now, I think he would be a better center than Daniel Brunskill and Jake Brundle because of his experience. Yes, he hasn't done well with other organizations, but when we look at guys who have the experience, that's kind of what we got to start relying on right now with the center position. I mean, there's other guys that the 49ers who try to go trade for, but that is the biggest concern from everyone I talk to about the 49ers offensive line. It's center. It's the biggest question mark. At first coming in, it was right guard, right? But
Yeah.
Spencer Burford has impressed so much that he is a actual lock to start at right guard from what I've been told. I don't know if that's what you see out there or
He is a lock.
you're,
It's not even questionable. He's a lock right now. And also, what I've heard, Trent Williams, his guy, put in a good word for him, which is why he essentially got that starting. No, not why. Obviously, his play and how he played during OTAs kind of got it. Williams put in a good word. Both of them were working together during the offseason, and now he's a lock at right guard. I can't envision a scenario where he doesn't start at right guard at the moment.
and that's the thing, right? So when you go and you bust your butt with a guy like Trent Williams in the offseason, it's going to pay off, right? The fact that a couple other guys didn't go with Trent Williams kind of bothered me, right? Not necessarily, I shouldn't say bother me, but it's worrisome, right? When you have the opportunity to go work with the best left tackle or the best offensive lineman in the game, and you don't do so to go pick his knowledge a little extra, that's just very concerning to me. And I love that Spencer Burford took that opportunity upon himself and went and worked out with Trent Williams because now it's paying off in camp. And we've noticed every guy that's usually working with Trent, they get better very fast because he gets the best out of you. So I think that's a lot. So let's throw some names out there, right? Because I said Billy Price. What would you think of if the 49ers went up and signed Billy Price to be their center or at least to compete or be a camp body during this rough time at center?
I would say that the situation's even more dire than possible. Because, look, if you were going to sign a center, you had to sign it before training camp started so that that center could really get reps over the first 7 days of practice. We are halfway through training camp, and if you sign a center right now, that tells me you have zero confidence in the two guys that you currently have if it's a player like Billy Price. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd love for better competition rather than worse competition, obviously. But if you're signing maybe a backup level player, like the 49ers are working out offensive linemen, all of them are backup level, like borderline NFL caliber offensive linemen right now. So you're not worried about the right tackle or left tackle position. But if you sign Billy Price as opposed to signing a backup level center, then it does to me, it shows that the 49ers don't have confidence in either of those two guys. Whereas if you sign a lower tier center who doesn't necessarily project as the starter, it shows that they need depth but not have confidence. But also the 49ers have an abundance of depth right now. So a signing would normally indicate that they aren't feeling confident. Overall, though, when you talk about Trent Williams specifically real quick, the one other guy that went on him and got a ride on his private jet was Jason Poe. Jason Poe hasn't really looked that great in 11 on 11s, but to somebody's surprise, the undrafted rookie is getting second team snaps. Nick Zakelj has been relegated sometimes to third team snaps, and Jason Poe has gotten second team snaps. Poe hasn't really looked that good so far, yet he's gotten second team snaps. Why? I'd assume Trent Williams put a good word in, and then we finally saw the good of Poe yesterday on Monday in one-on-ones or whenever one-on-ones happened, because he was holding up sometimes in one-on-ones with that strength.
So you mentioned two players, right? You mentioned Poe and then you mentioned Zakelj. So Zakelj obviously has the more upside than Poe.
Correct.
Poe was a guy who came in and everyone wants him to make the team because it's one of those good stories, like those
Yeah.
players that should make the roster because of his work ethic, because of what he can do versatility wise. But at the end of the day, I still don't think he'll make it because of roster. Like I don't like using it, but
Right.
there's a lot of time. You know what I'm going with. There's that politics in the roster politics because Zacal was
Correct.
drafted and he was a team had to use capital on him. Then that's what ends up being like the reason why they keep a player over another player when another player has more potential. And the likelihood of Jason Poe being stashed on the practice squad is a lot more higher than a guy like
Than Zacal.
Zakel because Zakel
Correct.
was drafted. So there's going to be a team that tries to claim him and see, oh, hey, well, let's see what he has. See what he has, right? Um, do you think the 49ers have their starting center on their roster? Because at the end of the day, like you said, if they go out and sign a guy like Billy Price, Matt Paredes, I know Matt Paredes has kind of been out the league for this year and kind of last year really didn't have a great season. But if they were to go out and try to bring him out of, I think he might have retired, but to bring a guy like that back and to be able to play, what would you say about the 49ers organization? Would you say they made the right move because the two centers are not performing well? Or would you say, well, they're making the bad move because they just need to let one of these guys get continuity with this offensive line and see what happens?
I'd say the second. I'd honestly say they made the bad move. Why? Because on Tuesday when we finally saw continuity, and what I mean by that is Daniel Brunskill started and took a majority of the first team reps for the second time. When he was there with the ones, they finally seemed to have some continuity. They finally had that interior run game working. And obviously, you had Brendel come in a little bit, but I want one guy to like. I'm fine if the flip flopping is every day. You have one guy that takes a majority of the reps. I don't want in between series for a player to be swapped in because the offensive line should get at least should feel some sort of what do you call it? Should feel some sort of cohesion every single day. It's fine if you switch on Tuesday and have Brendel play all of the one snaps on Tuesday and then play Brunskill on Wednesday. This swapping every single series to me, I really don't like it because that's where the cohesion issue is right now. And when you saw on Tuesday, when you didn't have that issue, that's when the offensive line was at its best. And so to me, and that was even without Mike McGlinchey. So to me personally, because of what I saw on Tuesday, and it's a very small sample size, I do believe that the 49ers have their center on the roster. And if we're being totally honest, I don't care who the starting center is. I just want one player to be there because I think the rest of the offensive line can honestly boost the center position up. I just want one player right now to be there so that they can develop continuity with how that center is playing and the pass protection, how they are in pass protection, how they are in run blocking, especially in the zone read on the inside run. I want to see one guy kind of be that guy so that everybody can get accustomed to it and build around it so that the 49ers offensive line can look good. Because we've made like backup level offensive linemen look good at times. Tom Compton, for example, last year.
You're actually absolutely right when I start thinking about what you're saying, right? Because when the 49ers allow one of these guys to take over, that center position is not going to be a big concern. Now, a question
Correct.
I
Yeah.
really want I really want reporters to ask, and this is a question that has been on my mind for the past couple of weeks, right? Since Daniel Brunskill started getting those reps with the ones, because we know Jake Brendel was calling the
Right. The protections.
protect pass
Exactly.
protection with Trey Lance. We know he's doing that. Now, are the 49ers allowing Daniel Brunskill to do that, or are they now having Trey Lance do so when Daniel Brunskill's in there? Because what ends up happening now is if we're having Trey Lance do so, it could be a problem because now we're having these guys, right? Now we're having Daniel Brunskill, who isn't really known for doing that, start calling pass protections, or you're having a potentially pretty much I consider
A
Trey
rookie.
Lance a rookie
Yeah.
because of the reps he's had during regular season. So what that means to me is are we having more pressure or more weight on his shoulders to call protection, run the offense, and be great? I mean, I would rather have a center handle that if he can. And if Daniel Brunskill can't, I think we're putting a little bit more pressure on Trey Lance. I know Trey Lance could handle it because he did it in college, but just that ease of pressure, having a center quarterback connection that does that for you goes a longer way.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very good point, and I think that's like important because when you talk about um, protections, right? You don't want to put even more on Lance's plate early than you can. And that's why originally going into camp, I personally believed that that Jake Brendel would win the job because that was already sustained. The offensive line already knew how what Brendel's tendencies were in that realm because he took all of the one snaps in minicamp, right? He's been the one over there in minicamp alongside Banks. And also overall, he's the guy with the more experience with Trey Lance. So Lance knows how Brendel kind of works because they played together last offseason, as we've mentioned a lot, and they've also played together a ton this offseason, right? Playing because they lose last year and they were the ones this year. So I think it is important to note that, but it also, like you mentioned earlier, it seems like the 49ers are pushing the agenda of having Brunskill trying to easing him in to be the starter.
And the biggest question mark on him is not necessarily the blocking or any of that. To me, it's the
Durability.
snapping. Once he gets that, yeah, and
Ooh,
that and the
okay.
durability, I think the snapping is a problem. So the videos that I've seen, and I know you've seen it, there's bad
Yeah,
snaps from Daniel
correct.
Brunskill. These snaps are snaps that not necessarily. So as a quarterback, every second, every millisecond that is going on that you have to react or you have to get your eyes off of what the defense is doing, it affects you as a quarterback. And when he's snapping them to the left, to the right, low, high, like these snaps are not good snaps. Like realistically, you want a quarterback to not be able to have to focus on the ball. He knows it's going to be in this range, and that's what Jake Brendel gives him. He gives him the consistency when he's snapping the balls, and it allows him to get the ball and go right, do what he needs to do. So for me, that's the problem. And then you say so you say durability because and this is the biggest thing that I've been talking about with Daniel Brunskill on playing right guard. It's his that knee tendonitis. When is
Hmm.
that knee tendonitis going to act up again? Because I know once you start having big bodies on big bodies, that knee's going to start acting up. It's going to start flaring up. And that's one thing I do not want to happen mid-season or even towards the end of the season, having to bring in another center at towards the end of the season because Daniel Brunskill's knee. And this is not me saying that's going to happen. God forbid that any of this happens, but we know he has a knee tendonitis issue. And like Mariah saying, she said, "Yes, Marco, I've been saying his snapping is horrible. The balls are flying all over the place." Mariah, I don't know if Mariah's there. I'm assuming she is, but I have not been there. I've actually been seeing videos from people
I
that are
think
there that are.
she's probably also seeing videos as well. Real quick, talking about the snapping, it was pretty bad in the first week. I
It's
will give a
gotten
little
better.
optimism. It's gotten better over the at least it's super small sample sizes, right? Again, this is overall in a total day. There are 40 to 50 plays on a regular day. Some play like Tuesday was the 70 play day. Overall, there are 40 to 50 plays. The first team offense is on the play on the field for 15 of those plays. So you're talking about 15 snaps. It's a small sample size, but he has been a little better with the snaps. We've seen him work with Lance a little bit after practice as well. So I'm assuming that it's going to improve. But you are right. Like that was at least originally a concern.
And all it takes is one bad snap in a game, right? That bad tendency, the bad habit to come back mid game for that to go over his head on the floor. Next thing you know, 49ers have a turnover. So that's something that we got to be concerned about. And then you text me, and this was very interesting because I was not expecting a text like this from Rohan. So essentially, Rohan texts me and he goes, "Hey, Jordan Matthews is tight end number 2 right now in terms of who is actually winning these routes, who are actually
Yeah.
doing what they are doing, right?" So this to me is very interesting because he goes down with an ACL injury. Now the next tight end is essentially Charlie Warner, who isn't even there because of his core injury. And then next you have Ross Dwelly, we have Tanner Hudson, and we have Tyler Croft. Which of those tight ends is now tight end 2 to you? Or should the 49ers go out and sign a tight end that I think they should go do this? I think this is a tight end they should go sign. I'm going to throw this name out there, and you'll probably say yes or no. You might like the idea. Some in the chat might like this idea. Should the 49ers go out and sign Eric Ebron to be their tight end 2
Yeah.
in the receiving game?
So this is an interesting topic. I actually kind of talked about the tight end position a little earlier today, and what I said on it is we have a ton of depth. We have a ton of depth. It's just we don't know if that depth is quality depth. That's why I'm a little hesitant on the Ebron thing because it's not always the tight end's fault. 49er quarterbacks just haven't targeted tight ends that much after day one. Like Ross Dwelly is a guy who's won a lot of one-on-ones. I think he's won 4 one-on-ones now in a row. He just doesn't get targets at all. The one guy there was one tight end that got targets yesterday, and that was Tanner Hudson. He got 3 targets yesterday, a nice 25-yard catch, and then the ball was knocked out by Leon O'Neal. I'd attributed it as a drop. He made a great catch, and then he turned around,
I,
and then he
I
dropped the
saw that
ball.
video. That's a fumble, man.
Yeah.
That's a fun. He made a football play. So in terms of like, so I seen a. I hate to say it, but I've been seeing all 22 angle. I haven't
Right.
really seen like the side angle. He made a football play, and as soon as he made that football play, ball gets punched out.
Yeah.
So like to me, that's a fumble. I do like
Okay.
how he is
That's
starting to make
interesting.
plays. Like so, that's where I'm like, okay, well, that's very starting to. If he starts to take off, I think he's better than Ross Dwelly. I really do think
I think
Tanner
so.
Hudson's better than Ross Dwelly.
At the
Before we
moment,
keep
yeah.
going,
Yeah.
Rohan, I got something to say.
Go for it.
Everyone, make sure you all go hit that like button, hit that
Yes, sir.
subscribe button.
Yes,
Make sure you
sir.
guys tap in because we're gonna keep doing this now that I have a actual schedule for work and I'm actually gonna have more time to record. Me and Rohan are doing much more podcasts this year. We're gonna be doing them hopefully twice to 3 times a week. So make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button. The 49ers Red Zone podcast on YouTube.
Hey, and also real quick, y'all better stay tuned for Saturday, man, because we are both going to be at training camp for the first time, I believe. I think it's Saturday and Sunday you're coming, right?
Yes, sir.
We are both going to be at training camp. So we have 2 different opinions now on Saturday and Sunday based on what we're seeing. The shows after are going to be extremely, extremely good because you're not only going
Like
to hear my voice.
I don't even know if I want to sit with Rohan because Rohan's gonna be like, "Hey, did you see that?" And I'm gonna be like, "Hey, we're gonna start thinking alike." So I don't even know if I want to sit with him. Nah.
Yeah, now we will be sitting on opposite sides of the field. We will not talk to each other. No text like I've been doing. But it's going to be a great show on both Saturday and Sunday. So stay tuned. That will be some really good content from 2 people instead of just one I count.
So going back to that tight end room, right? Should they sign? Because obviously you said we're talking about Tanner Hudson,
Yeah.
and then where Tyler Croft has been having. He's had consistent days. They're not days that are terrible. There's days he has a catch or two and stuff like that. Should they go out and sign Eric Ebron? To me, I would go do it immediately because putting Eric Ebron and George Kittle together with the quarterback like Trey Lance, you could do so many things with George Kittle, Eric Ebron, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk in the pass game. That's something they should do. Why wait and see if Tanner Hudson or see if Tyler Croft could be these guys? We know what Eric Ebron's going to give you. He's an athletic guy, and when Kyle schemes people open, you get them the ball in their hands. At least if he could be a decent tight end too, why not?
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I'll talk about with Eric Ebron, right? And that was kind of getting to my depth thing. When you talk about depth, right, I'm saying the 49ers have a ton of depth right now at the position. They have 6 guys at the position even without Jordan Matthews, right? You talk about Croft, um, uh, you talk about Tanner Hudson, Ross Dwelly, Charlie Warner, who's on PUP right now. But then you talk about like Troy Fumagalli as well, alongside George Kittle. So they have good depth. The one thing I'll say against Eric Ebron right now, obviously he's not a great blocker. I don't think half of these guys aren't great blockers. But the one thing I'll say, and this might be just an interesting idea. I don't know if it'll happen or not. I'm not predicting it because I haven't seen it on the field. What if the 49ers only carry 2 tight ends getting into 2022 and utilize Kyle Juszczyk as a third tight end because that saves you a roster spot? And when we talk about that center battle, you only carried 1 center last year on the roster. Maybe you carry 2 and have 9 offensive linemen over 8, carrying only 2 tight ends and getting Kyle Juszczyk, who has vocally said, I kind of want the ball a little more. I kind of hope that happens. Some extra run, that could be the case.
I would like that idea. Now, what it also could be too is do the 49ers view if let's say Jake Brendel makes the roster, right? Like he's a starting center. Obviously he's
Yeah.
making the roster, but let's say he's a starting center. That's what I meant. Came out wrong. Do the Niners view Daniel Brunskill as their swing tackle, backup center, and backup guard all in one? So then now you could keep one less offensive lineman if Daniel Brunskill's your backup, which also it goes with the tight end room, right? So now you have 2 roster spots, not just one extra roster spot for tight end, and then you bring back a guy like Tyler Croft or Tanner Hudson, which they could potentially do. So that's something I like the way you're thinking in terms of should they keep 2 roll with Juice as a third tight end, which essentially your second tight end, you just want them to be able to a good blocking tight end because 49ers do like to have that
Right.
kind of package. And I
And it
think it's better
depends.
suited.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
No, you're good. Go ahead.
the one thing I was going to say, it really depends on Charlie Warner's health. The underwhelming, in a way, performance so far from the tight end group has kind of signified that if Charlie Warner is healthy and good to go from core muscle surgery, the 49ers will roll with him. He was the tight end 2 last year, and they might just take him because he's a blocker, right? And if the 49ers like him, you're right. They might take a mold of of Charlie Warner, which is, like you said, Tyler Croft. I know a guy who you've been campaigning who could make the roster as a tight end, maybe even a TE3, because he's a good blocker, right? He has shown flashes as a receiver. You go back to 2017 with the Cincinnati Bengals, he had 57 catches, I believe, for 482 yards. So he's a guy who has also shown flashes as a receiver, but a blocker. And the biggest thing, it's not too big of a deal. The 49ers have shown they don't really care about it as much, but he has $25,000 guaranteed, and no other tight end on the bubble that I've mentioned has any dollars guaranteed.
See, the reason why I know the Niners don't care about the guarantees is because they cut Michael
Pruitt,
Pruitt
yeah,
last year, or was it last year or the year before?
yeah,
Might have
last
been
year,
last year. And I had said he wasn't going to make the roster, but he had a 500,000 like guarantee. He
yeah,
had 500,000 guaranteed. Like,
537K.
so
Wow.
they're not willing. They're willing to cut players that they don't think are going to make an impact on their roster, which is a smart business move. I mean, if it's not crazy of a dead cap, do it. So now going into obviously because we're transitioning from that tight end group, right? I don't want to talk about quarterbacks yet. I kind of want to hold that off a little bit later because
Let's
we
do
have an
it.
interesting
Yeah.
conversation about the 49ers quote. I don't know how to say. I mean, he's pretty much your backup quarterback. So I'm going to just say that. Going towards the defensive back room, what impressed me the most was Samuel Womack getting runs with the ones.
Ooh, yeah.
So I had
Yeah.
told Rohan, when was this when I had texted you, right? It was a while back, maybe a
Mhm.
month ago, that I thought that when I had heard
The
that he
49er
was going to be
quarterback.
running with the ones
Yeah.
eventually, or he was going to be accumulated into that one group. What do you think about Samuel Womack getting run with the ones? I mean, you've been there every day, so you know what he's doing and how good he's looked. Talk to me there.
Yeah, and I mean, when we talk about us too, right? I know we text a lot behind the sides, so you guys don't see it. We've kind of been talking about the cornerback room. Both of us, at least, don't anticipate Darqueze Dennard making the 53-man roster. At least that was the case early. And while he was getting a lot of run with the ones, both of us anticipated this move. However, if we're being honest, I initially was surprised at the timing because Samuel Womack really hadn't, with the 49ers, they've been easing some players in with the ones. They haven't given the guy they haven't just said the guy is starting on that day. They've been easing players in with the ones at times, specifically with the running back position. You saw Tyrion Davis Price get 2 carries with the ones on Tuesday, easing him in as well as Trey Sermon getting a couple of carries. But this was different. Samuel Womack in walkthroughs was starting at cornerback. Darqueze Dennard was on the backup field with the twos on that day, and he got the ones. He got all the reps with the ones, which is interesting because it's confidence in a 5th-round pick that not a lot of people knew of. And obviously, he's got like the attributes they like at corner. The length is spectacular for his height. The speed is there, and I'm very interested because the 49ers are probably going to pick on Samuel Womack now a good amount given the talent of the other 2 cornerbacks.
And it'll be interesting to see how he responds because even though a lot of people didn't know who he was, what ended up happening was I had text Rohan all like, "Hey, this is what I heard." The NFL teams were actually big; they're pretty high on Samuel Womack, and he might have the ability to not only make the roster but to start. Like the 49ers see him as a starting caliber nickel
Correct.
corner, and now that he's running with the ones in week 2, it doesn't surprise me because like I said, Denard, the last podcast, and Denard is one of those guys who he's super smart. He's a veteran, but he's not that good. And no knock to him, but I don't think he's that good of a player. He's super intelligent. The IQ is there. Now, what you got to do is with him is Denard is that one of those guys who could mentor younger guys like
Yes.
Denard, like
Yes.
Samuel Womack, like a Castro Fields, and that's what you want during camp. You want guys that could mentor. And at the end of the day, with Samuel Womack being mentored by Denard, it allows the 49ers to give Denard the boot once roster cuts come, because now we're starting to see a transition, right? We've seen Dante Johnson take reps from Denard. We've seen Samuel Womack starting to take reps from Denard. That's just a sign that the 49ers don't envision Denard as being their guaranteed full-time starter in the slot, in my opinion. Because at the end of the day, if he was for sure going to start there, the 49ers would not be giving no reps to a rookie. Like they would have that
Right.
rookie learn and get those second team reps. They would not have Dante Johnson taking reps from him either. So that
Correct.
just shows the team's mentality around Denard.
And really, in my opinion, I thought there was going to be two outcomes from the 49ers with Denard this offseason. It's either he gets all the reps and he starts, but I don't think they have interest in keeping a 31-year-old backup cornerback in the slot when they have promising guys and guys who they spent high draft picks on and they don't probably want to give up on after one offseason. And so, because when we talk about the cornerback room, when I say the four best corners, they're guys you might not think about, right? Obviously, the top two are obvious with Ward and Mosley. The next two best corners have been uh, Diamondo Lenore at 3 and Tariq Castro Fields at 4, the rookie. And then when you mention you've got Ambry Thomas there too, who I don't think the 49ers want to give up on at all after spending a third round pick on him, and it's only been one offseason, and he's shown, he's been up and down. I don't think you cut him either. That's 5 cornerbacks I've mentioned, and I haven't even mentioned the rookie in Samuel Womack.
And that's something you and I have both mentioned like three episodes ago, right? We talked about
Yeah.
how we don't think Denard's making the roster, but it's good signs to start seeing these rookies like Tariq Castro Fields getting reps to twos. And it was funny because I got a text from someone around the 49ers, and they're like, Ambry Thomas is kind of like the Trevon Diggs of the 49ers in camp. He's given up a lot of yards, a lot of big plays, but he'll make these nice interceptions, and he'll get these interceptions during camp. And I was like, man, I don't think that's a bad thing, though. I really don't, because even if you're giving up yards, if you're taking away the ball, like there's some goods and there's some bads to it. Now, Ambry Thomas there's the reps where he looks great that I'm like, whoa, he looks good, and
Right.
there's reps that's like, whoa, like a consistency is key. Like that
Correct.
is where, for me, because a lot of people are probably like, wow, like I wonder why Ambry Thomas is getting third string reps and Tariq Castro Fields is getting more a second team reps. It's consistency. It's not necessarily ability. It's just consistency, because we've seen Ambry Thomas have great reps, and then we've seen him have reps where he just doesn't look like his technique isn't all there. So that's something that I want to keep an eye on, especially Saturday and Sunday, looking at the backups and looking at guys that I'm actually interested in.
And the one thing about him, right? I'm still like, I still think the jury's out. I don't think Emory Thomas is a bust at all or anything like that, because you talk about the good reps. I mentioned, right, a lot of reps. I mentioned the one-on-ones. I break down every single one-on-one sometimes when I'm on stream, and I also mention the positives and the negatives of plays. Emory Thomas, right? It's just he needs more time as a press man corner. He wasn't utilized in that role in the first week of camp. And it was frustrating because the 49ers were playing soft man coverage. When you have that defensive line and when you have the back end like you have right now, there's no reason that you should play soft. Instead, play to the man's strengths. He's a press man corner with elite deep speed, which you see on routes. The times where Ambry Thomas is just getting mossed, he's there. It's just he's not been able to compete at the catch point yet, which is a place where he needs to grow. And I'm fine with Ambry Thomas getting third team reps. I actually like it because I want to see what Tariq Castro Fields has to offer after a pretty solid showing so far in camp. But I still think the jury is out. It's just he needs a little more, obviously, reps and a little more refinement in certain areas.
So now we're gonna go to a conversation. It's gonna be a dark place for a lot of people, and I want to explain before we even get there, Rohan, on what me and Rohan are gonna talk about right now. It's one of those conversations that needs to be had, um, and I don't think it's been had yet. Right? At the end of the day, we're not advocating for this player to be on the roster. We're not advocating for him to even start getting reps with the team. But there's
By
a
the way,
very
real
serious
quick,
question.
before he says the question, he's not talking about that guy. He's actually talking about Sourdough Sam, the mascot. He's been taunting fans on the sideline. It's been really, really sad. And
Embarrassing.
yeah, and like we understand it, but sometimes he's got to go. And of course, we're talking about Jim and freaking Garoppolo, right? The guy 49ers and him have a very interesting relationship. He's been throwing on the sideline over the last 2 days of practice. Yesterday, it wasn't even the sideline. They said, Jimmy, we're
He's on
sorry.
the field.
It was the main practice field. The 49ers, so obviously there's a 100-yard field. The 49ers were warming up on the first 50 yards of the field. You scoot down 20 yards, and Jimmy Garoppolo is at the 30-yard line with his trainer throwing, smiling. And then obviously right after that, just going up to fans, signing autographs, who all gave him a nice round of applause.
So the question I presented to Rohan, was it last night, right? Or 2 nights ago?
Yeah.
Was, does Jimmy Garoppolo need to play in order for a team to trade for him? And that doesn't mean in a regular season game. That means in a preseason game, right? Because you see all this throwing, this ramping up, and the ball's coming out fine. I think it's coming out fine. But does a team want to risk trading for a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo, who just came off a shoulder surgery without seeing him in an actual live setting with bullets actually flying at him? And I think at the end of the day, there's some truth to this question. I think there's the answer could be yes, and the answer could be no. If you go out there and you present a present to the organization, right? To the organizations, hey, look what this guy could do. He could still sling the ball a little bit, right? You might have a buyer. Now, we know the Giants have spoke with Don Yee. There's been a couple of other teams that have called around and see what his price is or whatnot. But there's no action. There's no calling to the team and saying, hey, we want to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. So what do you have to do for an organization to get Jimmy Garoppolo to be traded? Now, the 49ers could cut him. They could save all that $24 million in cap hit. But if they could get something in return for Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm sure they would rather do so. So, Rohan, I present you a question, and you have not you did not reply this answer because you said you wanted to save it for the episode.
Yeah.
Does Jimmy Garoppolo need to play in the preseason to be traded?
If Jimmy Garoppolo plays a single snap in the preseason, I'm going to be disappointed in the 49ers organization. There is $24.2 million at risk, and you are worried about a 30-year-old veteran quarterback who has 6 years of game.
Don't talk about my QB1 like that, first of all. One, I'll let you back in when you... I'm just kidding. That's definitely not my QB1. You
just kicked me off the stream.
Hey, the other day, the reason why I said that is because the other day I sent Rohan a picture. I was in Irvine, and I thought this was the most funniest thing. I didn't mean to kick you off. It's just a joke and everything. Yeah, me and Rohan love each other.
I know.
But so I was walking, and I turned, and I see Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm like, I got to take a picture with this guy because this is QB1. But serious question, serious note, back to your opinion on it.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the truth. I would be very disappointed if the 49ers let Jimmy Garoppolo play in the preseason. The point being, he's not like a 24-year-old quarterback. He's not Baker Mayfield whose play has been thwarted consistently by injuries, and that's why you might need something like that. He's not Josh Rosen, where there might not be enough game film or something, and you want to see something different. There is consistent game flow over the last 4 years, and
did you just compare Josh Rosen to Jimmy Garoppolo right now?
Okay. I'm just giving an example.
Jeez, man, can you give the guy a little bit of love? Like he did good things for the organization. Like, come on, man.
No, but the point that I'm trying to make is Garoppolo has sustained injuries before. We've seen it, and also Garoppolo was throwing during this injury. I personally don't think so, and I'm sure that Garoppolo himself can show images of workouts or not videos of workouts himself to other teams because it's in his best interest to do so. I personally don't think he needs to play, and I would be disappointed if the 49ers risked $24 million that will come off their salary cap if they just to risk it. No, it's 24. It's 24.
Is it really 24?
24.2.
But if he plays in a preseason game.
Oh, you're saying that the injury guarantee. Oh,
yeah.
The injury guarantee is $7.5 million. If you cut him, the only thing is if the 49ers I don't think the 49ers want to pay $7.5 million. I honestly
they don't.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Garoppolo if he got injured What I mean is, sorry, I shouldn't speculate. If he got injured, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers kept him on the roster, didn't play him the entire year, and just got the compensation pick after that, the compensatory pick, because they don't want to pay the $7.5 million. I understand saving $18 million, but paying $7.5 million for a quarterback to play elsewhere, that to me is something I don't think the 49ers would do. However, cutting him and not having to pay the $7.5 million, I can envision that.
So let's say he hurts himself at practice, right? He's on their practice field. He could re-injure that shoulder throwing. They're still gonna have to pay him that, right? You gotta so like the way I see it is like if they're allowing him to throw on their facility, allowing him to throw on the practice field, the main practice field, which he could re-injure that shoulder by just throwing a football. I mean, why not just let him audition one game, give him a quarter? The offensive line is solid. I mean, it's good enough. You give him a couple of plays, you draw it up so beautifully, where he throws a wide open touchdown, and you have a team come running to you to trade for him. Now, obviously, that's the dream scenario, but I don't think it'll happen. I think what's going to end up happening with him, I would love for him to be traded, but the market for him is not there because of his price, right? The teams that I have gotten information from would love Jimmy Garoppolo around that 7 to 10 million range. Jimmy
Correct.
Garoppolo sees his contract and sees $24 million. He sees, I would rather get cut by the 49ers because I only have 1 million guaranteed and go sign a contract where I could get that full year guaranteed rather than be traded. That is the issue right now. The money that Jimmy Garoppolo is making, not the cap hit. The money for the average for the actual year, 24 million. Teams do not want to pay that. They do not want to pay that $24 million. They would rather move money other ways where they pay him that money with a low cap hit, but we'll see what happens. Jimmy Garoppolo
Right.
is not one of those players that should be getting this drastic payday. I mean, yes, he wins games. Yes, he's done well for this organization. But at the end of the day, the 49ers are going to figure something out ASAP.
And the one other thing I'll say, there's no way that Garoppolo is going to make $24 million this year. It's either going to be he gets cut or it's going to be a rework contract with another team. I can't envision a scenario right now where Garoppolo makes 24.2 million. If we're just purely talking about cap space, there's only one team in the NFL that can afford it. That's the Cleveland Browns, and they have no incentive at all to pay the money. Exactly. Mariah is asking it perfectly. They don't have an no, Marco. They can pay more than other teams. They can pay Garoppolo 15 million, but there's no way that they willingly pay 24 million, even with the Deshaun Watson scenario, because they have Jacoby Brissett. I understand that Garoppolo is better, but to pay him $24 million for no reason, I don't think that is a realistic scenario, given that Garoppolo would likely go there as a free agent. That's the best situation
Would
that he has.
But would he likely go there, or would he rather go to Seattle? Would they
I,
have
I think
better?
he'd no.
They,
I think he'd
why
go to
not?
I think he'd go to Cleveland just because of that offensive line and that run game. I understand the obviously the Seattle connection, right? Because division rival, they have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, but they don't have a good offensive line, which has been something Garoppolo has benefited from while being on the 49ers that other teams don't realize. He would be sacked a hell of a lot more if he was behind a worse offensive line. That would be clearly seen in Seattle, which also showcases the lack of mobility, whereas it's not as much with the 49ers. So I think he'd go to a place where there's a stronger running game and offensive line with a weapon like Amari Cooper who can be utilized with significant volume.
So let's say, obviously, the NFL is appealing the Deshaun Watson case, right?
Correct.
Deshaun Watson gets suspended for the year.
Correct.
Now, do the Browns risk getting Jimmy Garoppolo as a free agent when other teams in the league could offer him a contract? We could see teams like the Seattle Seahawks, see teams like the Atlanta Falcons. We could see a couple other teams that are
Right.
around that name, right? Would they risk losing him to a guy like a team like the Seattle Seahawks for a fifth round pick, for a sixth round pick, whatever it'll take, and end up renegotiating that contract after they acquired him, right? Because we all know that as soon as Jimmy gets cut, Seattle's running to him, and they're gonna
Correct.
probably try to give him way more money than the Browns will. So a fifth round pick secures
But
your player, and you
mhm.
renegotiate that.
Sorry. Let me clarify. I don't think it's not that the Browns won't trade for him. I think they can trade for him. It's just not at his current salary. Because, like I said, the Browns have the most cap space in the NFL right now. So, regardless of the situation, they can pay him more than any other team in the NFL. I think Seattle has 15 million in cap space. They can pay Jimmy 16 million or whatever, pay him more than other teams, and then trade for him as well. I'm just saying I'm just saying the cards fit for the Browns the most because not only can they afford to pay him the most money, but they also have a solid infrastructure. So that's the reason why. I don't think he'll make 24 million, but I can view the Browns as a realistic possibility to outbid other teams both on the free agent market and in the trade market if the Deshaun Watson situation doesn't turn out like it has currently.
And with the reason why I think the Deshaun Watson case might go sideways is the appeal, right? Which 6 games was very low for the allegations, absolutely low. Now I think the NFL appealing, and now Jimmy Garoppolo becomes that piece where it's like, hey, you're already paying so much money to this quarterback. That means they're so invested into winning, right? They're invested in this organization is invested into winning more than anything. Why not go out and get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo that gives you a chance to at least win? Now, it gives you a chance to compete in that division with the Steelers not having a quarterback. The Baltimore Ravens have Lamar Jackson and a dangerous
Mhm.
team, and then you
Mhm.
got Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So if you're able to hold off the Bengals, you could probably make the roster or make the playoffs with that roster. I think something's going to happen with Jimmy. I think it's going to be a last minute thing. And I just can't wait till he's off the roster because I'm tired of seeing him on the practice field throwing. Because now you get fans that are like, oh, well, Jimmy's throwing. That means he's 3 days away and he might start practicing. Who knows? I don't think he should. He might start practicing just for teams to see him go in a live setting. So that's something that I'm keeping my eye on. Now,
Yeah,
going
and the
to the
one
main.
real
Go
quick,
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
just want to ask you one question before we move on to the main topic of obviously QB. Jimmy Garoppolo, can you envision a scenario where the 49ers hold him until August 30th so that other teams don't sign him and then cut him on the last day, on cutdown day? Do you think that that is a realistic scenario?
I think it's an absolutely realistic scenario, Rohan, because
Interesting.
if no one's giving the 49ers what they want in terms of like trade value or whatever, they could just hold him, cut him August 31st, whatever the date is. But they best believe that he will be playing against the 49ers September 18th, week 2. I mean, he doesn't need to know the whole offensive playbook to play. And at the end of the day, that is something he would be willing to do just for them making the business side more business side than ever, right? Because we know that it's been very business between the two sides, the way they've done things, where the Niners went out and traded for Trey, and then the Jimmy Garoppolo getting late surgery in the summer, so they couldn't trade him. So I
Yeah.
think he would definitely go to Seattle and try to get revenge on the Niners. But I would love to see that because he ain't getting no revenge.
Right. And the one thing about that, right, is Garoppolo knows that that's his worst case scenario. I wonder if he requests a release publicly, if that's the case. And like if that happens, I'm speculating, of course, but if that happens, I wonder, do the 49ers grant it, looking like an amazing franchise giving way to their quarterback, or do they hold on, like the situation I just presented?
That's interesting. I think repeat that question again so I could give a better answer.
Yeah.
So
If
it's
Garoppolo requests his release, will the 49ers grant the request? Let's say it's on like maybe August 15th, a week and a half from now. If Garoppolo requests the release, will the 49ers grant that release or will they hold on to him until the final day and then cut him? That's the better business move, but will they do the player move over the business move?
if he goes public and like he gives Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport that he's requested a release, I think the 49ers would grant him the release only
Yeah,
because they are an organization that likes to show players that they care about the player
right.
atmosphere and stuff like that. So I think they would do that. Um, and I think it would be the wrong move in a business sense. But at the end of the
It
day,
would.
you got to do what you got to do to keep your culture, intact, right? So that's
Correct.
something that they're going to be doing. Now,
Perfect. I
Trey
agree. Yeah.
Lance,
hmm
Trey Lance, right? Big time topic. 2021 versus 2022. What has happened?
So when you talk about Trey Lance last year, he was playing against the second team defense. Remember that. Jimmy Garoppolo was the 1, Lance was the 2. So Trey Lance completion percentage last year 69.6%. Oh my god, his completion percentage this year is 51%. He must be really really regressing. No. Remember first of all last year the defense itself wasn't as good, especially in the secondary. You didn't have a Charvarius Ward there. Emmanuel Mosley was 1 year below the way that he is right now. And overall, like that defense wasn't as strong, right? Just overall, especially with the ramp up that Shanahan does. And when you go to 2022, Lance is not only playing with the ones as opposed to playing against the twos last year, which was a primarily group full of rookies. He's playing against top tier level teams. When you talk about the top tier level teams, top tier level players, Jimmy Ward, Fred Warner. I can just go on and on, right? But Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley are there. And also, it's like receivers also going against these guys, right? It's just the entire offense going against a top level defense and the first team level of that defense.
So I would agree with you. So there's going to be a little bit of noise because my neighbor is parking his truck. So
You're
there's
good.
a little bit of noise. Now, talking about Trey Lance from 2021 to 2022, the biggest difference, not necessarily is Trey Lance running with the twos and him going against a weaker defense, but I think it's his receivers haven't really gotten open.
Correct.
Guys like Jawan Jennings, right? So the first couple of weeks, we see Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, and these guys like that. Now, we see Brandon Ayuk tearing it up. Debo Samuel wasn't there. Jawan Jennings was struggling to run these deeper routes. Ray McLeod has struggled a little bit. Danny Gray has struggled to get open. So I think it's we also got to look at, are his receivers getting open? Are they actually getting open? And a lot of times it's no. So that's something we got to look at. I also think this is very funny. Marco, stop peddling the Jimmy should throw. It's not a good time for the team. It's not. But I'm just saying, like, I'm just throwing conversations out there and not
Right,
necessarily
because it is a
about Jimmy.
conversation, especially with how it's going. That you must. It's a bad. It's not the one that you want to hear, but you kind of got to have it at some point.
Yeah, it's more so just having that conversation about should they do it, should they not do it, and at the end of the day, I think that's something we all gotta talk about. Um, Trey Lance, Rohan, you've been there every day. Is there anything you see from Trey Lance where it's like, whoa, he needs
Yeah.
to get better at this, or okay, there's signs showing he's getting better every day? Talk to me on what you're seeing at camp.
All right, I'll start with the positive because I know people want to hear it. Deep ball accuracy. Trey Lance has been pretty damn accurate when he's throwing deep. And by that, I don't mean completion percentage wise. And even then, he's looking pretty accurate. I'd place him at around 50% completion wise. I know I had him at 8 of 15 after day 5. I haven't recorded the last 2 days and compiled it to the stats. But the 49ers, their best, not 49ers, the NFL, like having a really good completion percentage deep. Grant told me on the show just a bit ago is about 44%. So throwing 53% compared to 44%, that's really good deep. And then when you compare, when you add to the fact that some of those incompletions have been dead on accurate balls, I place it at about 4 of those incompletions were accurate. 12 of 15 accurate balls deep with this coverage. That's pretty good. So Trey Lance so far, those were only the 5 games. He had a bit of a struggle yesterday throwing deep, but like 12 to 15, like on accuracy, throwing deep, that's something the 49ers haven't seen maybe since Colin Kaepernick in like 2013.
And that's something that he actually shined on during the actual college time that I watched, right?
Correct.
That deep ball he has, it's a moonshot, kind of like the similar throw that we see Russell Wilson have, right? Throws
Right.
it so high it just falls in the bucket. That's something that I've noticed too from a lot of the clips that I've seen. Um, I think the biggest thing that I like with Trey Lance is how he's moving out of the pocket and throwing on the run. That's stuff that is starting to pick up because for a little while he was struggling doing so. And now the last couple of days, I'm like, okay, he's doing it more consistently and it's starting to come into place. And I'm liking what I'm seeing from him outside of the pocket as well as inside the pocket.
The one other part that I'll say that Trey Lance has impressed me with, especially over the last couple of days, decision making. He isn't hesitating anymore to take off. when he has the lane, he'll take it. And that's exactly what you should do as a quarterback. People might pencil him as a running quarterback because of it, but no, when you have a play, the opportunity to make a play, you make the play. Earlier, you'd seen Lance hesitating to maybe run the ball, which makes him a little slower, in fact. And I honestly thought last year that was the case in both or in all three of his appearances. He wasn't necessarily looking to take off as well. He was overthinking it too much, trying to do it. And so that was like one positive that I've seen from Lance in that over the last couple of days, he's sometimes just taken off.
Is there anything from the offense that you want to see? Because obviously, will you be there tomorrow?
I will, yeah.
Something you want to see from the 49ers offense tomorrow?
Okay. Kind of to end it in a way, run the ball. I want to see how they run specifically on the interior. It was good on Tuesday. That was without Mike McGlinchey when pads were on. Pads should be on tomorrow. I want to see, can this first team offensive line sustain blocks and can the offense run the ball up the middle and on the inside zone plays. That's the main thing because they've struggled in the non-padded days as expected because no pads are on, and they haven't really had the opportunity to play together as much. Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey should be back playing more than they've played so far, especially off a rest day. And given that their ramp up is there, they're going against more of the first team guys because Travarius Ward, Javon Kinlaw should both be back. And it's going to be good first team offense versus defense. I want to see if they can run the ball with consistency.
Tomorrow's gonna be one of the worst days of training camp, Rohan.
Why?
They're coming off a off day.
It's a slow
Happens
install
happens
day. It's a
No,
slow install day.
not necessarily. They're towards the end of their install, right? But like,
Right.
it's not necessarily because of the install day. But what happens with these players is they get a day off, and then they go back into it, and this one you're gonna see the way they're moving, the way they're doing everything. It's gonna be one of the worst practice days of camp. It always happens. The day before
Uh-oh.
camp, the day before an off day is usually one of the better days. The 49ers decided to go light the last day. So tomorrow is going to probably be one of the worst days of camp in terms of everything. Off the way the offense looks, the way the defense looks, the way Trey might look. So that's something I'm not really. My expectations for tomorrow's practice is not high at all. Now, I do expect the 49ers to come out, run the ball a lot more, and get into the play action game. Get Trey into the play action game a little bit more just to see how all that's going.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Alrighty, that's it for me and Rohan for today's episode. We went about an hour into it. We should be back Saturday and Sunday live. We might do something. Are we doing something tomorrow? Or you're doing something tomorrow? I know you're doing something. You're always doing something.
Yeah. We'll see. Tomorrow is a bit of a time crunch for me after the fact. But we will definitely be back on Saturday and Sunday because both of us are going to have eyes on at training camp.
Thank y'all for tuning in. See you Saturday.